Hello everyone, welcome to the channel, and if you live and breathe anime like I do, then you're in for a treat. Today we're tackling Future Diaries, breaking down what makes it tick, what makes it talk, and what makes Yuno Gasai's knife drop. So, stick around, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get into the categories for this series. Okay, we got beginning, we've got characters, we've got story, and we've got a fourth mystery category. Ooh, interesting one, right? And we have ending. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and drive right on into the beginning. So, you got 3 points here. Your hook point, your premise point, and is the main character interesting, all right? These are the fruit salad that makes up a great beginning, okay? So, did it hook me? Yes. It actually hooked me with the premise because I'm a sucker for survival games, all right? And I love to think about how they work, the intricacies of the rules, stuff like that. And I quite enjoyed the Future Diaries because I often imagined myself, I was like, if I had a Future Diary, what would it do? And here's what I'm thinking, right? Okay, for my Future Diary, so like, here's how cool mine would look too. So I want it to just be a circle, right? Like this, and then it has like a screen or something, and then it might have 2 legs down here. That's what my phone would look like. And it would be called the Imposter, right? And it would allow me to like change into other people or mimic other people. I think it's a pretty cool original idea, but we'll see if you guys think it would have the lasting power on the series, of course. So, I think it thoroughly gets the point for hook and premise. Is the main character interesting? Not really. I think he's more of a woe is me ignorant type, which doesn't really do it for me, especially in the beginning. But if you stick around for the rest of the review, I'm going to get into some interesting facts about him that I think make him a little bit better than what you're probably assuming. So, the beginning total is 2 out of 3. So, as for characters, main character, right? Ooh, we're already back to him. I would be lying if I said the complete lack of character growth and the wishy-washy personality didn't make me dream of being a participant in the game with my amazing phone, as you just saw, just so I could take him out. I know Yuno would kill me, but maybe I want her to kill me. You ever think about that? So, I think he is inherently very frustrating. However, I believe because of how dominant Yuno is, I don't know if you could have him as anything other than a wimpy character. To be completely honest, I think you kind of need him to be a wimp and a less dominant force because Yuno hogs all the spotlight because she's a very interesting character and is quite literally the centerpiece of the show. So, that being said, I think he's at fault because of how the series is set up, but also a little bit of him because at best he's ridiculously annoying, and at worst he's unbearably stupid, so it's just pick and choose. Both of them are bad. So I'm gonna give him the 1 out of 2, but I almost wonder if it was just the world that set him up to fail here. So, as for usually what would be antagonists, I'm going to change it to Future Diary holders because there's really just 2 types of characters in this world. There's the Future Diary holders, and then there's everyone else, so we're just going to break them up like that, right? So, all of them are kind of structured like villains of the week, right? But I think the story does this ridiculously well. The character designs are unique, the motives are cool. I think it is admittedly funny that I went the entire series thinking that 8th, like the orphanage woman, was going to be some like cannibalistic mastermind, and then she was just a nice person. So, not all Future Diaries holders are bad. Most of them want to kill you, but it is kind of refreshing to have a few that are just kind of like, you know, there for the better of everyone, right? So, I think that's wonderfully nice. Neat. I will say that a few of their backstories, like Tsubaki, seem overly tragic to the point where it's like the sympathy you're trying to garner just doesn't work anymore because her whole scene with like the ball at the end and it was like, oh, the meaning, oh, my ball's back, and I just couldn't care less. I literally couldn't care less. I was like, why are you making mistakes every 5 seconds? But, you know, that was a moment. I was too engrossed in the hero dude because he was admittedly funnier, so 07's to you, Tsubaki. Overall, though, I believe the series' short runtime is refreshing because it makes these characters so hopelessly themselves, regardless of the situation, and I think they're a great character design as well, so I think overall they get a surprising 2 out of 2 because they quite literally just are themselves, for better or for worse. Some of the backstories didn't hit, but hey, you can't always have all bangers, right? And I would say, if anybody wants to know, my favorite is probably 9th or Minane. I think she's a really wise character. I think she's great, considering how most of her advice could be applied not just to the series, but life as a whole, which is kind of interesting. So, great stuff there. And I didn't talk about Yuno, which I'll probably talk about later. So just hold on to Yuno for a bit. We'll get to her. So, everyone else, quite enjoyed Days. I think it's funny his name is a reference to a plot device, which I'm going to tell you about later. And I think Murmur is a fun character as well. Especially if you watch the after credit scenes. Guys, I know some of you are dub haters, but please, please watch the Future Diaries dub. It is so funny. And also the scenes with Murmur at the end, like every episode, I didn't skip a single one. They're so funny. They're so good. But, you know, that's just something you guys need to get on, right? Everyone else is terrible. Every other side character is bad. The dad, the mom of Yuki, both awful, right? You have the friends, his supposed friends, right? Terrible. And then you have this guy, this abomination known as Aru, right? He has this huge side plot that's supposed to be ridiculously important. He's the observer for Deus and all of these things. But what is he actually doing other than eating screen time that could have been going to the Future Diary holders? Hot take. Hot take. His entire side plot is useless also. Aru, just wanted to make that known. But here's my hot take, right? Cut out all of the side characters except for Deus and Murmur, and then just focus the entire series, get some more ground time on the Future Diary holders, because they're great, they're interesting, they're fun. Just focus on that. And just leave everything else to die. So, for the everyone else category, they get a 0 out of 2. That was just... What do we do? What do we do? We're going to be moving on to the story, right? Seems to be more of like a survival game type deal in the first half, and then it goes to like time manipulation later. And to many, this would seem terrible. Like, this is where series go to die, is time manipulation. However, considering how unserious it presented itself, I quite enjoyed it. I'm not gonna lie. Pretty funny, admittedly. So, like I mentioned earlier with Deus's name, it's a reference to Deus Ex Machina, which is his whole name, right? And then it has a meaning in literature, which, for those of you who don't know, I suffered and I did the research just for you to show how good I am at my own job. An unexpected power event, saving a seemingly hopeless situation, especially as a contrived plot device in a play or novel. He is quite literally a contrived plot device in this novel. He is what he is, and it's hilarious to me that they keep doing that. And that's what I believe the latter half of the series needs to be viewed as, is not as if you are a member of the game. You need to view that part as if you are an observer like Deus or Murmur, right? And just watch the series unfold. Because if you watch it from a player's perspective, it kind of gets frustrating and you're focusing on Yuki, and Yuki never makes like a smart decision in his life, so you just... He's bad and you get frustrated. But if you look at all the other stuff it's kind of doing, it's admittedly funny to see the references to other, like, literature and kind of the hidden meanings, if you will. And Deus is just one of them, because he quite literally saves the story by giving Ninth half of his power as a contrived plot device. It's just, you know, real respect real, as they say. So, I also believe that it does episodic storytelling quite well, as each of the Future Diary holders are allowed to get their impact on the story, their time in the sun, and then kind of exit stage left once they die, in a way that doesn't feel clunky, because most episodic stories that don't have death as a real mechanic, they will just kind of be like, oh, they're done, or they'll put them in prison, right? But they can always come back later, and that kind of makes the story congested with the amount of characters you have. Future Diaries, for all of its faults, which it has quite a few, it doesn't have the fault of too many characters, because it literally has the right amount of people for every single situation, except for the side characters, which I mentioned, which just feel like filler characters. It feels like I'm watching filler, and I don't understand why. So, I will say that I didn't enjoy the whole multiple timelines thing they did with the series in the end, but I do believe it's still way better than most people will give it credit for, considering how well thought out some of the parts are, like the foreshadowing with Murmur, the third party with Yuno. So overall, I would give it a wonderful 4 out of 5 on the story structure category, right? So the fourth mystery category, right? I'll use the Notebook again, because everybody loves the Notebook, right? No. whoa! It's a new category. Everybody's applauding. Everybody's applauding. Oh my god, I can't hear myself over the applause. Originality and creativity. It rewards new ideas, well set out stories, stuff like that. So, and it also lets me do a little bit of history, which I quite enjoy, so let's get into it, right? So, as for the Battle Royale genre, which is what Future Diaries is, it's a survival game Battle Royale, there wasn't anything especially new about this genre that Future Diaries did. However, it did set it apart in the diaries and their ability to shape the future, which the fact that each diary has a different power depending on its user and the user's personality is great. I love that. It adds a little bit of flavor. Wonderful. I think their ability to shape the future is done in a really interesting way because the series understands the future is not set in stone, right? None of the characters thinks the future is set in stone, which is great. Because always, in like these series, you'll have that one character like, the future is the future and fate is fate. And then they'll just like be harping on that for half the time and then they realize that the future can change at the end. So every character in this series understands that the future is subject to change. Wonderful. Then you get to a lot of interplay, right? Because they can hear the phone static on the other person's phone when the future changes, right? So then they're like, oh, wait. It's changed. What do I do, right? How do I maneuver this situation? And also, the dead end mechanic allows them time to try and change their fate, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It really feels like the clock is ticking down on this series. Good tool at providing real tension that this story does. Overall, love the diaries and their ability to shape the future. Really set the story apart in its genre, right? So, now here we go. Everybody was waiting on the Yuno Gasai, right? We're gonna talk about her. To say that there weren't yandere before Yuno would be untrue. However, to say that there were any that so clearly defined their own character archetype better than her is untrue as well. She is what it means to be a yandere. The golden standard, quite literally. She carries the entire series on her back due to how fascinating she is every step of the way. And to say that she isn't original because the archetype technically existed before her, it's just short-sighted. She is so fascinating and honestly kept me on my toes the entire time I was watching, because there are a lot of points where I was like, surely she's not going to kill this person in front of all of these people. And then she does it and you're like, oh my god, I wasn't ready for that. And also there's a bunch of like crazy things. Okay, so here, let's go ahead and talk about a situation, right? So there's this point in the story where Yuki kind of admits that Yuno is his girlfriend, right? And right after this, you're expecting something like a heartfelt moment between them. Maybe they go on a date, right? But what ends up happening is Yuno essentially just kidnaps him and then holds him in this dungeon, straps him to a chair so he can't, like, run away at all, just so she can make it to the 28th, which is her goal. For if anybody knows why she wants to make it to the 28th, you know. If you don't watch the series, you'll understand very quickly. But it's just funny to me how you would think she would be super nice to Yuki, right? And she is, but she also just kind of blatantly Stockholm syndromes him, which is funny in its own way, but tragic at the same time. It's really weird. She makes me feel a lot of emotions throughout her time in the story. And overall, I think she is what it means to have watched Future Diaries and to have shaped the anime genre as a whole due to the yandere archetype. Does it remarkably well because of how far she's willing to go, right? Love it. So, I'm also going to give Yuno a bonus point because of this, because of her impact on the anime world as a whole. So, I think that's very well garnered. If anybody thinks she doesn't deserve a bonus point for her impact, I would encourage you to look at how many different series have been influenced, because horror romance blends weren't really a thing before this show. They had a few here and there, but Yuno and Yuki's relationship is so iconic, it shaped a bunch of other relationships in anime later. As Death and Tatsumi from Akame ga Kill. If you guys know that relationship, it's very similar, though admittedly a little bit turned down, but As Death is definitely in the yandere category, I would say. And so, I think it's fascinating to kind of watch this series and then see a bunch of other yandere relationships and be like, oh yeah, that's a Yuno moment, right? So, great stuff all around. And so I will say once again, given the impact that Future Diaries has had not only on the survival game genre or yandere archetype, but the anime world as a whole, I believe it gets the 3 out of 3 for creativity and originality. So that leads us to the ending category, right? As for the ending, I think it wraps up the storylines in a satisfying way, with the future diary holders, all of them kind of getting their happy ending, and delivers a wonderfully satisfying conclusion to Yuno and Yuki's relationship, which I will say, if you didn't catch in the anime, Yuki's screen switches to Yuno came to see me at like the last panel of the anime. But if you want to see what actually happens when Yuno comes to see Yuki, read the last chapter of the manga. It has a beautiful reunite scene and it is amazing, completely satisfying, and really puts a lid on a wonderful experience for them. As for the survival game aspect, it had a clear ending, which is also something I quite enjoyed because I feel like a lot of series that revolve around the game have some sort of loophole that they have. Think like Hunger Games, right, or something like that, which to me, I really don't like when they never actually finish the game because it feels like they just invalidated the entire story's stakes up to that point. And it's like, why was I watching for this game anyways if you were just going to cheat right at the end, right? So congrats to Yuki for being the winner. Woo! He's so happy about it too, spending 10,000 years alone. Although I will say, admittedly, messing with time, while it is interesting in this series, is never really a good idea. Therefore, my earlier point about the confusing nature of the multiple timelines thing still leaves a lot to be desired, so I will be giving it an overall 2 out of 3 for the ending category. And an additional bonus point will be added to Future Diaries, because for whatever reason, I can say with certainty that this series, in all of its glory and mess, is something I have genuinely enjoyed watching from start to finish, and it has been so long since I've had a story that made me feel that pain in my chest. You guys probably know this when you watch like one of your favorite things and it ends and you see the credits roll for the final time and you're like, God, I wish it had one more season, one more episode, 5 more minutes, anything. You just wanted to see a little bit more of those characters, and I honestly don't know why, because to be completely honest, I was going into this being like, I had heard popular opinion, people think this story is like really bad and stuff. So I came in there being like, oh boy, it's gonna be like Darling in the Franxx. But I genuinely enjoyed my time watching it because of how unserious the story took itself. It just tried to have fun at the end of the day. I thoroughly enjoyed it all the way. And therefore, I will be giving it the bonus point because the story resonated with me in such a way that I have not had in such a long time. Such a long time. So, it has been a wonderful blast, Future Diaries, and I'm so thankful I watched you from the very bottom of my heart. So I will be giving you the great rating of 15 out of 20. A gratuitously great rating. And I will see you guys in the next one. Adios. Also, fun thing, I almost forgot to say, the first opening, absolute banger. One of the most iconic anime openings of all time, and I still think it's one of the best of all time. So, I will see you guys in the next one. Adios.